I'd like to introduce one of our keynote speakers for the evening, who is Australia's Disability Discrimination Commissioner, Alastair McEwin. Alastair commenced his commissioner appointment in July 2016 after holding several senior roles in the disability and legal sector, including the peak body for community legal centres in New South Wales and People with Disability Australia, where he was the Chief Executive Officer. Please welcome Commissioner Alastair McEwin.
Thank you, and hello and good evening, everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted to be here. Firstly, and I'm mindful of what the former Senator Vanson said, but I do also want to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and pay my respect to their elders, past and present. And I'm sure I'll get into trouble from her later on in the night. And I also want to acknowledge all the wonderful people here who are present here today, Parliamentary and members of Vision 2020 and stakeholders. And in particular, I want to acknowledge a number of parliamentarians here, the wonderful Minister for Disability Services, Minister Prentice. Thank you so much for your commitment. It seems like we see each other almost weekly at events, and I think that demonstrates Minister Prentice's commitment to getting out and about and really listening to the community, listening to what people have to say. I also acknowledge the Shadow Minister for Disability, Senator Carol Brown. Thank you also for your commitment. And to also all of you here, and in particular, board and staff of Vision 2020. I was so excited to be here tonight, so excited that in my excitement, I left my parliamentary pass behind in the hotel room. So I'm wearing, quite unusually for me, a visitor's escorted pass. So I must remember not to walk out on my own, otherwise I'm sure I'll be dealing with security. But also, the night got even better when Amanda talked about one of my favourite things in life, Haig's chocolate. Now, I eat Haig's chocolate because of their practices of employing people with disabilities. I also eat it because, and you're probably going to work out, I'm very biased, I'm also a former South Australian, born and raised in South Australia, but I'm delighted that Haig had shopped around Australia. And there's one dangerously close to my office in the Strand, in off Pitt Street Mall, so I'm a regular visitor. But also, one thing that Amanda and I also have in common is that we support the same football club. So we are not that popular in South Australia, but I can also say we know which one to follow. So picking up on the theme of what Amanda talked about, or the former, do you mind if I call you Amanda? Is that okay? I feel like I know Amanda really well because I have the Age Discrimination Commissioner, Kay Patterson, and from day one I used to hear stories about, Amanda and I in Parliament. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the stories that I've been told because I really will be in trouble, but I feel like I know Amanda well, so thank you also for the support that you're giving to Vision 2020. I want to talk about two things tonight, and they are, one, what can you do, and what needs to happen for the broader community. Firstly, the example that Amanda gave about Haig's chocolate installing a flashing fire alarm for people who are deaf or hearing impaired. Now, I also have one in the office, and it's a simple thing. It's a really simple thing. It doesn't require innovation. It does not require great expense. It does not require a working group to come together and brainstorm and try and work out what do we need to do for the poor deaf guy, or that kind of thing. It doesn't. The solutions are out there. What is unlimited is imagination. But I'm often told, when I meet with politicians, and I'm not going to name names tonight, but when I meet politicians, I say, do you employ a person with a disability in your office? And what I invariably hear is, oh, actually, politics is a hard profession. It's a tough profession. It's long hours. You have to come to Canberra in the winter. You have to travel a lot. You have to know lots of people. And I think, okay, that's politics. What about being a doctor? We have doctors with disabilities. What about being a lawyer? We have lawyers with disabilities. What about being an Uber driver? We have Uber drivers who have disabilities. And I am a living example of someone who, when I was a young graduate, many, many years ago after graduating from Adelaide Law School, I wanted to do what other graduates wanted to do, and that was to go out and practice law or have a fun year, I thought at the time, of being a judge's associate. Now, you might think being a judge is a pretty high stressful, a lot of high intensity work. I mean, you're charged with interpreting the law of Australia and you have to get it right. And I had a number of interviews with Supreme Court judges, and there was a very common theme of shaking their head. Invariably, they were older, white, Anglo-Saxon males. Thankfully, that changed a bit in the last 20 years, but a lot of them were just shaking their head and saying, "You're deaf, I can't really see this working." I remember one in particular shaking his head, looking down, saying, "It can't work, it won't work." But then I had an interview with a federal court judge. And the interview was going quite well, what are your aspirations, how did you go at uni? And then he said, "Now you're hearing impaired." And of course in my mind I started to get ready for how can I defend myself. And the simple question he asked was, how can we make it work? What do you need in the workplace that will make you be able to work with me? And in the end, he actually gave me the job. So I'm forever grateful to the Honourable John Von Duser, who had me for a year. It was a fun year, but it was also a year full of learning for, not only for him, but for the staff. About a week after I started, the judge said, "You need a TTY, the old deaf phone that we used to use in those days. You need that, so let's order it." Week 1, week 2, week 3, no TTY. The judge came into the office one morning and said, "Where is it?" "Registry downstairs. I was trying to defend registry. There's a bit of a problem with the order." So he flew down to registry and spoke to the manager. And it turned out that the manager had thought it was too expensive, not worth it because I was only going to be there for a year and, it wasn't worth the expense. Well, you can imagine what the judge had to say about that. Brand new TTY arrived the following week. So you can see you can have the most fantastic leader, but you have also got to get the staff behind you. So that's the first thing I want to talk to you about is why not? Why can you not employ a person with a disability in your parliamentary office, in your workplace, out and about, Uber and all those other things that we take for granted? So think about what is stopping you. And also, it is against the law. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it is against the law. If you have two candidates, one with a disability and one without, and the one with the disability meet all the criteria you are looking for, and you want that person, and you say no because of their disability, you are breaking the law. I would love, as Commissioner, to have enforcement and compliance powers. So that's just, if you're ever thinking about reforming the Disability Discrimination Act to the MPs in the room, think about giving me some more powers and I know what I will do with them. The second thing I want to talk about very briefly, and I know you're all having dinner, but I also know I've got a captive audience, I hope. Quoted and target. And I'm a strong believer in both. Now, I know quotas can be unpalatable to many. People feel that it's forced upon them, but we have seen it work in some areas. We've seen it work in the gender equality and in other areas. But targets can also be useful. Targets are voluntary in the way that an organisation can say, right, we are missing out on a wonderful pool of talent out there. Let's set ourselves targets. So if there's that sense of ownership, that sense of we know what we need to do, we are missing out on potential candidates. So for me, I think targets are a great way of recognising we do have entrenched discrimination, we do have a problem, and as Graham said, as mentioned earlier, we do have an attitude problem. I know of a Rhodes Scholar who is blind, and he's now working for the New South Wales government in the Attorney General's department. So if a Rhodes Scholar can do it, you look at the amazing talent that you could be missing out on. A potential Nobel Prize winner could be amongst your candidates. So targets are a really good way of embracing, but also of setting the tone. of also being leaders. And I have to say, there are companies who are doing it, there are organisations who are doing it. They know it makes business sense, but they also know it makes common sense, but as well it makes it fair for everybody. I've been absolutely thrilled to be here, and I also want to acknowledge again Amanda and the board and staff of Vision 2020, and I look forward to seeing your campaigning and your work produce results well and truly before 2020, but I will also settle for 2020. So thank you.
Thank you, Alistair.